Hey everybody, Peter Zeihan here, coming to you from the campus of the University of Toronto. It is June 6, and the news today is that the Russians have blown up the Kakhovka Dam, which is at the head of a large reservoir on Ukraine's central river, the Dnieper. It was blown up from the inside, so it was definitely the Russians. It wasn't an external explosion, so there's really no controversy there. And the fact that after I tweeted it out, I got just an avalanche of Russian bots saying otherwise pretty much proves the point for as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, regardless of why it's gone, four things that matter out of this. First of all, from a purely military point of view, like putting humanitarian issues to the side, we'll get to that later, this is a reasonable play. The Ukrainians are getting ready for a significant military offensive, and at least in part that was going to involve a series of amphibious strikes across the Dnieper River, both above and below the dam. That probably can't happen now. The reservoir behind it is huge, and it's going to take a few days for it to drain, and then it's going to expose muddy lake bed. And downstream, you're talking about massive flooding, which when it finally goes down a week or two from now, will also be incredibly muddy. So the offensive to this point has been delayed because of spring melt and winter rains and all of the mud that goes with that. You've basically taken this entire zone and made it no-go for at least a month. Now, later on, when the river is lower, it might be easier to cross, but for the here and now and for the next few weeks, absolutely not. So if you're Russian, there's some certain logic to destroying the dam. It's also the only crossing on the river in the lower section. So you've now removed even a theoretical place for the Ukrainians to punch across the river on land or reinforce with amphibious assaults from elsewhere. So, number one. Number two, there's a concern upstream of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant because it drew its coolant water from the reservoir. Now, we've poked into this a little bit, and the folks at the IAEA are not hugely concerned about this. They think there's a good backup system in place. But whenever I hear lack of coolant water nuclear power plant, I do get a little nervous. So it's probably not a crisis. We'll see. Third, we should expect to see more activities like this. This is not the only crossing. There was a bridge to Kherson that the Russians blew up when they were retreating last summer. And if you go upriver to Zaporizhzhia, there is a double bridge system along with another dam, which creates another reservoir. And so we should definitely expect the Russians to repeat the feat there with similar outcomes, although not as much. It's not as big as a reservoir, and for similar reasons. But it's the fourth and biggest reason that I find most interesting isn't the right word, but illuminating as to what Russian thinking is. The Kakhovka Reservoir, it raises the level of the river and allows 4 different canal systems to be fed with irrigation water. And 3 of those systems are absolutely critical for growing crops in southern Ukraine and the Crimea. Now, I've always believed that the Ukrainians were going to disable or destroy one of those systems, the one that specifically serves Crimea, in order to force a siege on the peninsula. But with that reservoir now gone, none of these systems can access water. And you're talking about territory that is responsible for growing about 1/4 of Ukrainian crop. So in a stroke, the Russians have shown us 2 things. Number one, they really don't plan on holding this territory in the near term. And so they're going with an old strategy that's kind of scorched earth, which is designed to make it as difficult as possible for anyone who takes the territory to hold it. Because we're talking now about number 2, a country that used to be one of the world's major breadbaskets, going to become a net food importer on the verge of at least a regional famine in the not-too-distant future. Or for those of you who are familiar with Russia's history in Ukraine, triggering a regional famine again. I'll try to have better news tomorrow.